You just made it one.
Yeah. All right, Eddie. So thanks for coming on my podcast. I guess we'll schedule a time for me to come on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Figure out if I have any curses to break. I don't know. Maybe by then I will. I'll work on it.
Exactly.
So yeah, absolutely. But we connected, I think, through LinkedIn, right?
Yep. Initially, that's where I
Good.
feel like I meet a lot of my people there on LinkedIn. That's
I'm always
my
in
favorite
search
platform.
looking for podcasters and guys who do motivational stuff. And you work with a lot of like student athletes, right? And students and stuff.
Yep. Student athletes, but even more so in high schools, colleges, things like that. Okay. So anybody that's in between that 16 to 22 age gap, you know, I feel like that's my bread and butter.
They need a lot of help and direction. I mean, most of them are lost. It's like, you know, that's the biggest problem. My son's 19 and he thinks he knows everything. And I did too, frankly. Out of fairness to him, and I was 19, I thought the same thing. And then you get older and you realize, wow, I didn't know shit at that age, you know?
Exactly.
That's the way
I tell
it goes.
people the same thing. That's one of my opening statements, man. I was like, listen, if I can go back and and I knew what I knew now when I was 18, 19 years old, I'd have been a millionaire today.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, that's the secret of life, right? So if you could go back and know what you did know then, it took you 40, 50 years to figure out, you'd be the richest guy on the planet, controlling everything, fixing the world and saving everybody. But unfortunately, life does not work that way. We get so much guidance from people and we still don't take it. So we'll get into that in a minute, but maybe we can go back a little bit, talk about, you know, like where you're from, where you grew up, a little bit about your backstory and how you got to what you're doing today.
Yeah, man. So I love to start here because I'm a firm believer that you have to share your story in order for people to really understand where you come from, right? Yeah. Like giving content without context is always just really difficult for people to understand.
Very good quote, yeah.
So my background, I was born and raised down in Baltimore, Maryland. I was basically born into a family that struggled with poverty for generations. You know, my dad left when I was about 8 or 9 years old, which forced my mom to take care of me and my brother on a $13,000 a year disability income. Oof, right? So tough. when you talk about poverty line, we were definitely below the poverty line, right? And I grew up with this mindset, very similar to a lot of people I think that grow up in these you know, low income environments. Is I had 3 options in order to create success in my life, right? And when I say success, you know, at the time it was money, it was influence, it was wealth, right? Right. And those 3 options was basically, you know, become some type of professional athlete. Right. Become some type of professional performer, so a rapper, dancer, singer, something like that, right? Or number 3 is sell drugs. Like I thought that was my only 3.
The inner city, options. You don't see a way out, right? Exactly. Yeah.
So I chose option 1, Mitch. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take this option 1. Exactly.
Seriously. I'm sure a lot more kids choose. Look, we're creatures of habit, right? So we do things that are easier for us, especially when you're a kid. Yes. So people are going to be tempting you. Hey, you know, come say it's easy money.
Yep, exactly. So thankfully, I had a brother and a mother that steered me away from all those different things. But like I said, I chose option 1. I was like, you know, I'm gonna go to the league. I'm gonna play in the NFL. This is my thing. I'm gonna do it. Nice. And then basically, you know, a dream was sparked, right? I was like, okay, if my mom is raising us on a $13,000 a year income, she's not going to pay for college. So my whole goal became, I got to get a scholarship, right? I got to get a full ride because that's the only way I'm going to be able to make it out. And then what ended up happening, obviously you start telling people, right? Like you tell your teachers around you, tell different people like, oh, I'm going to school for a full ride. And I just got all the pushback, right? You got the people that told you it's a pipe dream.
Come on, Eddie, you know. Well, you get financial aid, right? I mean, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I would think, right? No?
Yep. So, it was a part of the package. But thankfully, I guess long story short, I proved those people wrong. I was the first student in my high school's history to ever earn a D1 scholarship coming out of Chesapeake High School in Baltimore County. I went to Bryant University up in Rhode Island. Okay. And it was because of that scholarship, I was able to be the first male in my family to ever earn any type of degree from a university. So as you'll find out, just like my podcast title, I'm all about breaking generational curses. Yeah. So it doesn't matter the past that you were born into. It doesn't matter the family that you were raised by. You can still go and create the same level of success that anybody else in this world can create if you just choose to. So
but you just need to meet somebody to break that mindset, right? To know that it doesn't have to be the same. And sometimes, look, I know it's hard, right? Not everybody meets you. Right. You're kind of like, because you're kind of like the intervener, right? The outlier. Right. You're the guy who says, hey, come on, Bobby, or whatever his name is. You can do it. I did it. But a lot of kids don't. They just think it's not possible. And there are ways to do it. Don't question about it. I had a guy on my podcast. Oh, I think he's on today, actually. If you listen, Pierre from, it was originally from Brooklyn, but Atlanta now. And he's got this trucking company. I mean, he had this company, lost everything. And then he got another company. And then he got mugged and beaten, and he was unconscious, and he lost that. He just raised like $1 million through crowdfunding on Republic.
Wow.
I think he was the first African-American guy to do it. First, I don't know if he's African-American, but he's black.
Wow, that's dope.
Yeah, he's killing it. But here's a guy who just said, he just wouldn't take no for an answer. You can beat me down, I'm getting up, and that's it. So yeah, definitely mindset, right?
It's all about mindset, man. I think that's the number one issue that we see today, especially when, you know, me thinking back in my upbringing, my childhood. I was never made aware of other things that was available to me, right? Like, either I told you my dad left. My dad was my dad was a truck driver, so you know, I saw him go out and drive truck and things like that. You know, a couple of other male figures I had in my life. You know, I saw them do basically 9 to 5 things, right? Like things that, you know, you just kind of blue collar worker doing different things.
And if your dad stayed around, you might have ended up a trucker. I mean, that's very common. Your dad's a plumber. Good chance you might be a plumber.
So that's the kind of stuff that I was exposed to. I never knew, you know, I only knew one male entrepreneur. And I mean, and still to this day, he pretty much took over the father role for me as I was growing up. His name is Damon. Love and appreciate him. But he was more so
not the FUBU guy.
No, not Damon John. But Damon just worked all the time, man. Like Damon was the prime example of a work ethic.
Like hard worker.
He was a vendor down with the Orioles and Ravens Stadium. He did he was a taxi cab driver. He owned a candy truck. His wife owned a daycare business. It was like those two together was just like businesses galore, right? So like I had a good example from that to realize like, bro, I want to work for myself. I definitely don't want to be in a position where I'm working for somebody for the rest of my life. Like I always knew I wanted to have something that I can also leave a legacy behind for my kids.
Nice.
But without that, I don't think without that exposure, right? Like being exposed to that type of lifestyle, I would have never knew, right? Like
it's just ignorance, football, right? You just don't know, right? Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, you learned what was possible. You know,
exactly.
Right. Good. Good.
So that's part of what I do, man. I like to go in different schools, different college, environments, and letting these kids know, like, bro, you can do literally anything you want to do. Like, just because your dad was a doctor don't mean you need to be a doctor. Just because your dad was not there, right, doesn't mean that you got to be, a non-existent person in life, right? Like, you have so much more value that you can give. You just have to decide what opportunity, what option, what route you're going to pursue, and then just flat out run after it.
I mean, why do you think I'm an attorney? Nobody told me any different.
Right.
I don't know if I'd do it again. Well, my grandmother told me, go to law school. But you just follow.
I feel like that's all shaped like that.
And you played ball in college, right?
Yep.
So did you play in the NFL?
I did not play in the NFL.
Yeah, like 99% of the people, but still, good discipline.
I stopped short.
Right. And what'd you study in school?
Entrepreneurship. I was a business guy.
Yeah. And you were there. I mean, you're younger than me, but there's a lot more entrepreneurship programs now than there were. That wasn't when I went to college, forget entrepreneurs. Those people from France, Yeah. So there weren't any programs. And then I think it was Babson was the first school to have a program. And now they're really all over the place, which is nice.
I find it interesting. Like, the whole idea of going to college for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If I had to go back and do it again, the primary reason I tell people all the time, the primary reason I went to college was because I got a full ride. If football was not an option, I probably would have followed in the footsteps of Damon that I mentioned earlier and just was an entrepreneur from the very begining. Right. But because I had the full ride, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this thing out and everything
else. Good. And it's good to get a degree. It's a thinking exercise. It's important for everybody. I don't know if there's any correlation between like going to school where I know people that never went to college are very successful, ones that did, but I think overall mentally it's a good exercise where a lot of us grow up,
College for me was all about exposure to different lifestyles and different people, which made me more aware of how different people operate, right? The communication skills and knowing that like the entire world is not just shaped by Baltimore, the inner city, right?
Yeah, right.
Like I got to see different people from all over the country and how they live, their upbringing, their thought process. And I was just like, wow, the world is much bigger than, whatever my Baltimore's radius.
Yeah, you think the whole world's like that, right?
Exactly.
Right. No, it's a good experience. So, okay. So it's interesting because if you did the entrepreneurship program, that's what I was saying. Mm-hmm. What kind of things did you like? What did it open your eyes to? What kind of things did you learn in the program?
So I love the program itself. I think one of the best professors I had in that program was a professor. Her name was Sandra Potter. Phenomenal at what she did. And she owned a couple different businesses and things like that. But Primarily it taught me the basics of entrepreneurship. Like, do you have an S corp, an LLC, like these,
right?
Like behind
like
the scenes
the things that
things.
people skip.
Exactly.
That's why it's called the accidental entrepreneur.
Exactly.
Well, don't learn that stuff. That's important. That's stuff you do learn in college. Yeah.
Yep. So I learned all those different things, but again, I think coming out of school and being connected, like the very first, actually, I got connected to a guy that was huge in network marketing, like multi-millions, different things in network marketing. And that was where I got the most of my experience actually in entrepreneurship.
It's a good way to start. You don't have a lot of money to get started. You can,
exactly,
you can make mistakes and it doesn't really hurt you that much. You don't make money, but you don't lose anything. And it's a great way to get exposure to, and look, and network marketing gets a bad rap sometimes. There's some really good companies out there.
Absolutely.
And you just got to look at what fits you. But I've interviewed guys about it. I think network marketing is a great way to start. You learn sales, you learn all kinds of stuff, and you meet some really cool people.
Exactly. Yeah. And it teaches you people skills. It's still to this day, I think business in general, it's all about relationships. Like, absolutely. The old phrase we hear all the time is your network determines your net worth, right?
That's
so
for
like
sure.
Developing a good network of people and learning people skills,
right?
How to communicate and how to articulate what your vision is to get somebody else on board with what your vision is. I think that's huge, man. Like if you learn that one skill alone, there's no limitation on what you can achieve in life because you're always going to have a team that's ready to run with you.
Yeah, I've taught my son from the beginning. He's got a LinkedIn profile that he set up at school and had a network. And I have a friend of mine too, both his kids are out of school now working with him. He got him networking early. Look, it's not what you know, because if nobody knows you, then it's kind of worthless. It doesn't matter what you know. So yeah, that's definitely a big theme with, I think, what I talk about, I'm sure with what you talk about.
Definitely, 100%.
You know what I also find, because you mentioned your teacher and she had businesses, I find that the professors and the teachers in entrepreneurship programs, they're much more practical. They're not people that have been teaching all their life. They've got practical skills. They've started businesses. They've worked in businesses.
Right.
If you're a history teacher, you probably just, history, but you don't have any practical knowledge. So I'm sure there's plenty of history teachers out there going to be really pissed at me, but whatever.
Right. Well, unfortunately, there were some professors that didn't exactly own a business either, right?
It's hard to look up to them, right?
Exactly. So, like for me, I'm a prime example of, or I guess I'm an advocate for learning how to decipher between advice and opinions.
Yeah,
right?
Good point. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people, you're starting your new business or something like that, or somebody, and you go to somebody maybe that you trust. It can be a mom, it could be a friend, somebody like that. But they've been employees their whole life, and you're asking for advice,
right?
But they're really giving you,
and they're happy to give it to you, but it's really not based on anything.
Exactly. So, learning how to differentiate between like, okay, mom, you're just giving me your opinion based off of something maybe that you've seen on TV or really whatever your experience is.
Right.
Exactly. Compared to actually talking to somebody who's been in the standpoint of life of where you're reaching towards or where you're traveling towards and getting true advice, insights.
Like Damon, because he's done it and is doing it, and up and down. I mean, you learn a lot from. I think it would be great if you could start out in business for like first 5 years, just fail on your face, learn everything, get it out of the way, and then be successful the rest of your life. It doesn't work that way, but that would be great, right?
That would be amazing.
Grow more. Yeah, we grow more from mistakes. It's unfortunate. So okay, so you were in school, and then you graduated school, and would you remember your first job?
Yeah, first job was in sales. I was actually selling synthetic turf fields. I was selling football fields, the stuff I played on.
That's big ticket items.
8 years. Oh yeah, I call it chasing white elephants. I worked there for 2 years. I sold 1.5 fields.
It's an easy market to identify, though. It's not like you got to look for prospects, right?
Right. It was basically schools and colleges, man. And every once in a while, it was a sporting complex, which was like a city development type of thing, or like an indoor facility or something like that. But yeah, for the most part, I was chasing around schools, athletic directors. But it's a different type of market because you also had to hit in all the different not athletic directors, what do you call architects. So it was like architects, engineers, civil engineers, but also getting really good relationships with general contractors and stuff inside the area. Yeah. So we called it the triangle. Like you had to really work the triangle. Right. Because otherwise, if one person didn't know you in that triangle, you were no longer a part of that process.
Plus, if it's public institutions, there's like, government contracting rules, right? And submission, you have to do RFPs and things like that.
Yep. Put it in bids.
And you're brand new. You're green. You're young. You know what the hell you're doing.
Right. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was a good time. Like, I've been in sales my whole life, to be honest with you, Mitch. Like I said, I worked for Damon since I was actually 9 years old. So I sold hats and T-shirts and peanuts at the Orioles and Ravens stadiums since I was 9.
Okay. Well, we won't tell everybody that he's breaking all the labor laws, having all the 9-year-olds working for him.
That's perfectly fine.
But it's great. It's great experience for you.
Exactly.
Right. That's so funny.
So but yeah, it was good times. You know, like you said, a great experience because I learned so much. Right, you learn so much at such a young age, which I think helped me. You know, in college, it helped me moving on to different aspects of life.
Yeah, you're not some shy kid from the inner city. You're nervous. You're comfortable in your skin. You're used to talking to people. It's not a big deal. Yep. None of that stuff's scary when you do it.
Exactly.
Just worrying about it, not doing it. Yeah.
I love what you said. It reminds me of a quote that I've always, you know, my wife reminds me of it all the time. But it's action cures fear. So anytime you're scared of something, just go do it.
Yep. And it's always the first time.
Right.
You know, I think Brene Brown calls it like your first effing time. You know, every time we do something for the first time, we crap our pants. We're so nervous. Yep. And then when we do, we realize, well, that wasn't so bad.
Right.
You know, and then you get more comfortable with things and you get better at it. But you got to do it. You got to try it. Yeah, absolutely.
I tell people to embrace the suck of success.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, you got the SUC part of it, but the first time you do anything, you're going to suck at it. Like, believe it or not. I think
if you go in with that attitude, like this, you know, I'm going in here, most likely this is not going to work out the way I think it is, but this is an opportunity for me to learn and grow. The guy I just told you about was on my podcast.
Yeah.
He would go to these pitch contests and everything and these VC things. And he said, listen, the first 10 or 15 times I went, I wasn't going in for money. I was going to fail on my face. I wanted to get comments I wanted to get so good at this thing that that's what happened. But you have a different attitude. Then when you get shot down or you fail in your mind, you don't feel like a failure. You're just like, well, I learned that lesson. So let's go on to the next one. And if everybody had that attitude, I think they would get a lot further ahead. But that has a lot to do with the motivational stuff you do, right? Talking to these kids.
Absolutely. I think, you know, John Maxwell has the best inside of his book. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, right?
Right. You never lose. Not
exactly.
If you, I mean, you
unless
can,
you quit.
Right.
I tell people when you quit, that's when you lose. Other than that, if you keep on getting back up, you keep trying and trying and trying and trying. I also look at it as like a formula. Try, fail, and adjust, right?
Right.
You try something, you're going to fail, you got to adjust.
Right.
Try it again. Fail, adjust. And keep trying until that failure is not an option anymore and you start winning from it.
And you get better at it. Look at coronavirus. There's people that, I mean, I could just point them right out. You know, they looked at this and said, you know what? I'm just not going to participate in all this bad stuff. And there's an opportunity here and I'm going to pivot and do whatever. And there's other people that just haven't left their house or gone to a Zoom meeting. I mean, you know.
Right. Exactly.
So I had a talk the other day with somebody and a group and they're like, well, how many Zoom meetings do you go to a week? And so somebody said, oh, I've been to one. I haven't really been to too many. I go to a couple. I was like, well, is that per week? Or they're like, well, how many of you go to? I go, well, is it group meetings or one-on-ones? And they're like, well, why do you have categories? I go, well, I probably go 12 to 15 group meetings a week.
Right.
And depending on the week, how busy I am. And then one-to-ones and the podcast, I count those too.
Yep.
A lot, like 20 a week. I mean, I'm connected. So
yes,
they were like blown away. And I said, well, you know, you got to do it until you can't do it anymore, you know?
Exactly.
But it's pretty funny the way people approach things. But that's true for a lot of stuff.
Because some people live by the minimums, man. Like, people, I think a lot of the times people fail in life where they don't get ahead.
No,
that's the issue. It's not that they fail. They don't get ahead because they're focused on doing the minimums. Yep. Like, oh, you know, if somebody told me that I only needed to do, I don't know, 100 calls a week in order for me to be successful in business, then they're just looking at, I need to hit 100 phone calls.
Right. Exactly.
Whereas I feel like the successful people, the ambitious people, they're like
500.
Exactly. Like, 100 is the minimum. So therefore I don't play at the minimum. I play at the maximums. So what's the maximum amount of calls that I can make inside of this desired time?
You can't take off until you gain a lot of speed, right? You just flounder in life and just
get the ball rolling.
You know,
once you get that flywheel going, it keeps rolling, man.
Absolutely. But you know what? And as you do that, like if you become the kind of person who's driven, right, and doesn't do the minimum, and it becomes the norm.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes. So everybody's doing 100, you're doing 500. And you know what they say, if you shoot to being good, if you shoot to be great, you're going to be good, you'll be fair. If you shoot to be excellent, you'll probably be good. Very hard to always be there all the time,
exactly.
You know? But it is something where you become better at it and it becomes more natural to be at that level. You know, true for athletes, right? The guys who make it to the pros are just used to working at a different level than any of us.
Yep.
You know,
they established habits that became what I call autopilot. Like you wake up and you just do life on autopilot.
Yeah.
And when you can get to that point, and the habits that you've created are good habits,
yeah, you're good.
And now you got the flywheel, bro. The momentum is always in your favor. You can make business, create business at the will of a phone call, right?
Right.
Because it's just a habit that you've created. You just wake up and you do what you do.
Yeah, and then when the guys change, they retire, I don't know, they blow their knee out or whatever, they're ready to pivot to go into the next business that they're going to get involved with. So
because you take those same success principles, because success leaves clues, right?
Right.
And you go apply it somewhere else, and you go win there too.
Yeah. Some people aren't really Sherlock Holmes sometimes when it comes to that stuff. Right. You're like, dude, it's right here. You just did it. I don't know if I could do it again. Of course you can. You just got to figure it out,
Exactly.
Look, there's a lot of people that are successful in a certain business because they don't spend the time, they know their business. They don't spend the time learning business in general and struggle later on. But so you were out. So I want to hear how you kind of developed into, being the motivational torch carrying guy that you are.
So, I mean, it's not a crazy story. To be honest with you, it came down to a moment where I went back to my high school, and I was just going back just to say hi to my teachers and things like that, because although I had some people that told me I couldn't achieve something, I also had, some people that really believed in me and was really in my corner when I was at the school. So I went back, I think it was sophomore year of college, just to say hi to all of my teachers, and I ended up bumping into my old athletic director, and he was like, hey, go figure, the spring banquet is happening tonight. Would you be willing to come and speak and talk to the kids?
Just like that.
I was like, had
you done any public speaking?
No, absolutely not.
Perfect timing.
It wasn't that I was afraid. Here's the thing, right? Because people ask me all the time, like, were you just afraid of the speaking and everything else? I've never been afraid of public speaking.
Yeah, it just wasn't an opportunity at that point, right?
Right. But at the time, what I've learned about myself, again, it's a self-limiting belief, and that's what I talk about all the time. But what I thought was, because I didn't achieve my end goal of where I was headed, which is going to the NFL, I thought I didn't have any value to share.
Right, which is totally not true.
Right. So, at the time, that's, I'm thinking as a 19-year-old kid, like, no, bro, I can't do this. Like, I can't tell these kids nothing because I haven't won. Yeah. Right? You know what I'm saying? So he basically was like, no, I think you're going to be able to do it. Like, come back. And I ended up coming back, and I spoke to the kids for I think it was only 15 minutes off the cuff, didn't prepare anything, just was basically listen to your coaches, continue to work hard, different things like that, right? Same
Good
stuff
seeing everybody. Take care. Have a good night.
Okay. But the cool thing that happened, though, Mitch, was the teachers and the students that came up to me afterwards, it was like, man, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for, giving us that insight. And one kid came up and was basically like, man, I appreciate that you came literally 2 blocks away from where I live right now. And you just said that you got a scholarship. Like, nobody in my family has ever done that. So now that became his goal, is to get a scholarship to go and increase. Yeah. And I was like, bro, at that point in time, I was just like, dog, like this is what I would rather do for the rest of my life. Yeah. Now I did a whole bunch of stuff in between before I came to the point of all right, I'm gonna stop playing around with this and become an actual speaker.
Right.
But I can trace it back to that one event, that one interaction. I was just like, bro, this would be amazing if I can continue to add value to people and inspire people to be everything that they can be in life. So that's where the progression came.
Yeah. No, a lot of people, even that I have on the podcast, they don't think their stories are compelling. They're like, it was no big deal. I'm like, it's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't realize there's a lot of people out there don't think that what the possible is, Yep.
So
that was good. So you touched a lot of kids, but that was early on. So then, so then now what? Okay, that was great. How do I do that? I don't know.
Right. It's like kind of, I don't know what to do with that.
Podcasting stuff for a living. I'm like, how the hell do I do that? What are you talking about?
Right.
I'm still waiting to figure that out, but we'll see. Yeah. Somebody said, you should do this for a living. I said, well, when you figure that out, you call me and tell me how to do that.
Right.
So because everyone and their grandmother's a podcaster now, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Podcasters.
But that's the cool thing, man. I think most people fail to realize that they all have a voice. We all have stories, right? Yeah. So use your voice to inspire other people. There's somebody out there that, something that you went through at the time that you were going through it, it looked like this mountain, this insurmountable obstacle that you could never get around.
Right.
But as soon as you overcame it, it became an anthill, right? Yeah. But now the people that need you are the other people that's still looking at that same obstacle and are seeing it as a mountain. But you need to teach them that it's just an anthill, right?
Right. Because then you get to the next mountain, you're like, that's a hill. That's not like that other one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Relative, you create the confidence, and you just keep on every obstacle that now comes your way. I have this mentality, and I'm a big faith guy. I think I've mentioned that before when we chat offline.
Yep.
But you know, we're told in a good book that we're all more than conquerors, right? So that means the battle ends with us winning. Like there's no way of losing. The battle ends with us winning. It doesn't say we are a conqueror more than a conqueror, right? So therefore, when you get a mountain that comes your way, an obstacle, a setback, whatever it is, it's only an opportunity for you to become greater, right?
Right. Yep.
And the other thing I tell people is nothing grows on the top of the mountain anyway. All the growth happens in the valley. You got to go through the valley in order to get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. I mean, life's a growth experience. You get to the top of the mountain, it might be the end.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to reach nobody wants to reach the end. It's death.
Exactly.
Those are the only people that don't have problems, don't have opportunities.
Right.
You know, that's true. People, I don't like these problems. I go, well, it's a good thing you have problems because if you didn't, what's the alternative, you know?
Exactly. Because then you'll just be existing instead of living.
So then what did you do? So that wasn't a speaking engagement like they found you. So then, do you remember the first thing you did when you woke up the next day? You're like, all right, I'm going to try and pursue this.
So again, like when I was 19 years old in college at the time. So I was just like, okay, that was
back
cool,
to school.
But I'm going back to school. My dream of going to the NFL was still very real. So I was like, you know, I'm going back, you know, playing football, different things like that.
What position did you play?
I was a D tackle, fat boy crew all day long. Let's
go.
You go.
So, nice.
but yeah, that was pretty much where that went. And then, like I said, after that, I just kind of forgot about it. Not to say I didn't forget about the event, but I forgot that that was even an opportunity. And, you know, afterwards, I was just like, you know, I'm going to just go ahead and pursue the sales career because I know if I go in sales, I want to learn sales at a deeper level because it's not transactional anymore. I got to learn at a relational level. Right. And then I can go out and spark my own business because an entrepreneur is going to need to know how to sell anyway. So that was kind of my mindset after football didn't work out for me. Go into sales, learn the sales process, then take that and grow a business, right? Which is starting to work out pretty darn well for me.
Yeah. Well, I think I tell young people, learn how to sell early on. Because that's the one thing that people are afraid of. They think of it slimy or whatever. We all sell ultimately anyway. You got to sell yourself. You got to sell your business, whatever it is.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm not talking about like, you know, learn techniques so you can pull the wool over people's eyes. That's not real sales. Sales is helping people. Yeah, right. You're not manipulating people, but learn to become comfortable conversationally about whatever it is that you offer, your service, your product, because ultimately if you create a business or a product or, you know, or you do a startup, whatever, you're going to have to sell that. You're going to have to sell to investors. You're going to have to, sell yourself. You're going to get on the podcast, come on yours or mine, and people got to sell us.
Exactly.
And tell us why we should, you know, what we should have them on. So yeah, I think that's probably the, you know, number one skill you should learn that you don't in school, obviously. So
definitely. I let everybody know as well, Mitch, at a very young age, like, listen, if you got a girlfriend right now, right? Because most kids that I talk to ain't married, right?
Right.
But if you got a girlfriend right now, then you're a salesman.
Yeah.
If you got a boyfriend right now, you're a salesman. At some point, you had to communicate what you're passionate about, what your values are, things like that. Communicate that to the other person. The other person saw value in it. They decided to be in partnership with you. I think every sales transaction is like a partnership.
100%.
So 100%. On a simple level, if you can accept that, then you're a salesperson, man. Like, just get over it and don't look at it as like this sleazy process.
Yeah.
It's just you being human with somebody else and developing a relationship.
Right. It's not for you to take advantage of people. That's not the point of selling. It's not Tin Men. You know that movie? Remember that movie? They were like, sell the siding and they put the, you know, like they con the wife into, or the husband or whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Wolf of Wall Street, when he said, sell me this pen.
Yeah. Like, Boiler Room, all that stuff. Glenn Ross. I mean, that's the problem. That's the perception of salespeople. But yeah. And, you know, and nowadays it's even, you know, it's even harder. You got to get in there. You got to connect with people, but you can do it online, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and you said your school was D1?
Yep. D1 AA.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't play against the Alabamas and things like that, but you know, we were in the same league as UAlbany, I don't know, Central Connecticut, Robert Morris, Duquesne. I think of some of the other ones that was in that conference.
Got it.
Monmouth. Did I say Monmouth already?
No.
Probably did. Yeah, it was Northeastern Conference. So we traveled basically from Maine through Pennsylvania. And then every once in a while we had like, you know, we played, what is that? Coastal Carolina. But that was like out of conference play or whatever else. But yeah, we played some different games, but it was a cool experience, man. So like I said, I wasn't out there riding with Tara Gurley.
It's about discipline.
Yeah.
You know, working with teams and coach. I mean, you know, well, you don't get hurt, I guess, blow your knee out or something, but you know.
thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had any of those crazy injuries, man. Like, of all the years I played sports, and for me to have my worst injury, I don't know if this, I think it's going to be a video show, but I can't bend my thumb. This one over here, that's my worst injury.
Well, you can live with that, right? People have traumatic brain injury from football, and your thumb can't move. I think you're okay.
So I said, I'm perfectly fine, man. Y'all can keep it.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. That's funny. So, but I guess by the time you get to be a junior, you knew that it just wasn't a path for you at that point, right? Because of the competition and so forth.
Yep. I think, honestly, to get a little deeper, I felt like I honestly gave up mentally my going into my junior year. And then I realized, actually, no, it wasn't my junior year. It was going into my senior year. Okay. Because I thought, I was working hard. I was like, all right, the senior year, I'm gonna actually get the starting position. Once I get a starting position, there's still a chance. And then I ended up losing the starting position to somebody else. And at that point in time, again, I wish I knew now what I knew back then. I allowed the expectation of the people around me to basically be my expectation of myself. Right. And then I was like, okay, I don't, maybe this is not for me. It's not something I was supposed to do, blah, 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 blah. So then I was like, all right, well, whatever. I'm gonna go ahead and just focus on all of my academic side of things and getting a job and all this other stuff. So like my mental focus, although I was still there physically, I was mentally focusing on life after football instead of focusing on the season and what was happening at the time. So it was different. I think that was probably one of the hardest times of my life.
I'm sure. Trying to you're a young kid. You're at a crossroads. You got to pivot. It's not going to happen.
Exactly. Yep. I had to depack this whole identity that I felt like I created. I was Eddie, the football player, right? And then I wasn't the football player anymore. So I was like, who is Eddie now?
Yeah. Because you put yourself out like that. And, it's kind of, which is good, right? Because it helps you reach your goals as opposed to being hiding it from people. But happens to 99% of us. So, okay. So do you remember your first job out of school then?
Yeah. We already talked about it. It was me selling turf.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. That was at school. So, but you said that it lasted like a year and a half. Right?
Yeah. It was 2.5 years that I was there. And then I ended up I went to a different position. I was what do you call it? It was a campaign manager for a company called Snap Raise. So I was still inside of sports, but then I was helping teams and coaches like basically fundraise for their teams. So I was helping them do mobile. It was basically using, social media as well as emails and things like that. So kids can actually get donations instead of selling, the cheap popcorn and all this other stuff that costs $60 a can.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a good job. I ain't gonna lie. I had a lot of fun with it. I think it provided a lot of value. However, life changed at that point. At that point, I was married. I was expecting my first son. So I was like, man, I don't want to be out 8, 9 o'clock at night launching these teams. I don't want to become the absentee dad. Right. So I started looking for a different position, which landed me at a company called Toshiba, which is
I've heard of them.
Most people have.
Yeah.
But most people think I sell TVs and laptops. I don't sell that. I'm actually a copier, printer, document management, office equipment type of salesman for that company. And I have a lot of fun with it, man. It's a great environment, great people I work with. Probably one of the best bosses I ever had in my entire life. If you can say, you love a boss. But yeah, I think again, all these places. Yep. I still work for them 9 to 5 for the time being until my business can overshadow what I make.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the key, right?
Absolutely.
So that was your first non-sports related job.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So it got me into the regular old 9 to 5, which I appreciated because again, that allowed me to really place a structure around what my workday looks like, and then start to be able to have great time management for family time, and then going from family time to all right at 8 o'clock, I put my entrepreneur hat on, man. Like everything I got to do as far as business wise happens after my kids go to bed.
Well, it's kind of hard without. My kids are older now, but I mean, kids don't want your attention until you're doing something else.
Oh yeah,
on the 100%. Phone, working on something on the laptop. Dad, they pull your pants, and you're like, what?
Well, I got little ones, man, so they always want my attention. I got an 18-month-old and a 5-month-old. So
yeah, my older daughter, she's like a babysitting queen. She's babysitting right now. So the family has 3 boys, but they had a boy who was like 2 or 3, and then and the mom got pregnant and turns bingo, they're having twins. So
wow,
my 17-year-old daughter goes and at 10 days old, she's She's rocking
Send her up here to Binghamton.
Exactly.
We need some extra hands.
You would be impressed. The funny thing was she would babysit for these kids, and, you know, she's helping one, she's rocking one and feeding the other and this, and, you know, her friends might chat with her or whatever. And they say to her, when you said you were babysitting, I didn't think it was like real babies. Like, props to you, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So she just loves it. She'll be something related to kids someday, a doctor, a pediatrician, something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but she's good. And my other one, she could rather take care of snakes and alligators before she takes care of kids. So she wants to go to vet school or something like that. Yeah, something like that. That's harder than medical school. So good luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So
they operate different from us.
So so the speaking and stuff is really at part-time right now. So you got to kind of work it in.
Yep.
With your schedule. So are you able to go and speak to schools and stuff? Like, absolutely.
I've been speaking to a lot of schools. The best thing about it is being able to have a book. And for anybody that's out there actually listening to this, and maybe you're, you know, I'm hitting a chord with you, you're thinking about like, man, I want to get into speaking as well. A great way to get into schools is to basically, a lot of schools don't have like speaker budgets, right? Like they don't have a budget to say, oh, we need this motivational speaker to come in.
Public schools. Yeah,
exactly. However, most schools have a book budget, right? Like a budget for books.
Okay.
So therefore, if you can find a way to articulate and put your things in a well-packaged book, right? And then, you know, you basically reach out to schools and say, hey, you know, I would be willing to come and speak at your school for free. However, I would love if you're able to purchase X amount of books at this wholesale price of this.
So that's your price, baby.
Exactly.
You get paid.
Yep. So that's how you get in there and be able to, again, and for me, it's all about adding value, right? Like in the end, I'm not going to change everybody's life that's inside the crowd, but my hope is that at least one of those kids hear my story and their entire mindset has changed. Like,
yeah,
you know,
that's
they
worth
can
the
start
whole
pursuing
thing, right?
something different. Exactly.
One kid in every group you speak to.
Exactly. So that's the impact that I look to have. And, but yeah, you know, I definitely leveraged the book. Thankfully, you know, again, it's kind of crazy. I would never thought that I'd be an Amazon bestselling author in my lifetime, but
and
you know,
be on my podcast. I got to say that I got a bestselling author on there. Nice.
Right. But for that to actually come together and for me to actually add that feather to my hat, man, I think that's just a blessing from God. I think that's just a sign to say like, hey, your message needs to get out there. A lot of people need to hear this, and being able to go and take that and run with it so you can inspire some of the other people that's going to be coming on behind you, man.
Right.
Because I'm all about legacy, Mitch. I think legacy is the most important thing that we can leave behind. And it's all about what you're doing today that's going to leave an impact on generations to come. So, yeah, you know, it's whatever I can do now to do that. I think that's where my actions and all of my focus is directed right now.
Right. So let's talk about, because there'll be a link in the show notes and I'll put it on our website for people to buy the book, but let's talk a little bit about the book.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the things in the book and motivational behind the book and, you know, that type of stuff.
Absolutely. So the book itself is called Unlock Yourself.
Okay. How to
earn the success you were born to create.
Right. For anybody watching the video feed, it's behind you on the shelf, but the audio people can't see that. So.
It's very true.
Yeah.
You know, proper positioning, man. It's always
product
a good thing.
Placement. That's what it's all about. I love it.
But no, the book itself, you know, it comes from this core belief, right? The Unlock Yourself main title, it comes from this core belief that we're all born with seeds of greatness inside of us.
Right.
But it's up to each individual to plant those seeds in an environment that will allow us to grow. So that whole Unlock Yourself, it's I tell people, you're the only person in the way of yourself. Stop making excuses about where you were born. Stop making excuses about the lack that you have. You need to start where you are and do the best with what you have, and then continue to grow on top of that. Right.
Yeah, the problem's between your ears. It's not outside of your control.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the core of the title itself, right?
Yeah.
And then I feel as though, like I said, you already know how to earn it. You just have to earn the success that you were born to create. It's already there, right? So at that point, it's just understanding the habits that you need to create in order to get you to that end goal in life or where you want to be. And the entire book is actually a formula. So I call it the Unlock You formula that goes from developing your upshot, which is your vision, your goal, and everything else, and then developing each habit that's in between that's going to get you to the last part, which is an unending process. Like once you achieve your goal, you got to set a new one.
Right.
Because if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards by default. There's no such thing as standing still.
You don't transform and then stay where you are.
Exactly.
You stop growing. Like I said, that's death. You got to keep growing, you know, and keep I mean, yeah, look, I've reinvented myself half a dozen times in life, but you know, it's always, you know, you go. Okay. That worked out. It didn't work out. What am I going to do? And then you you go and doing the other. Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to do, but yeah, I think having a book with a formula in it gives people a track to run on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what, and, I set it out that way. I even give people a free workbook as well. So there's reflection questions inside the book. However, I give a free workbook away, and you can go, the link is actually inside the book if you buy the book, but you can also just go to my website, which is eddiethomason.com/unlockyourself. Okay. And you can download the workbook right there for free. And it also has a reading list that's in the back, because I'm a firm believer in not just stopping at my book, but then it's a reading list of a year's worth of books that you can just pick up to start adding value to your mindset and developing, the strong mental fortitude that you're going to need to actually achieve those goals.
Right. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Maybe we can put some links in the show notes for the books that you like to recommend. Cause I put a lot of stuff on our website. That's stuff that I like and read, and have, we're doing a book club later in the month on Referral of a Lifetime. You ever read that book?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that book about building, keep in touch program. And
exactly,
people overlook the 200-300 people that they know.
Right.
And that's where you start. You don't start calling on people you don't know.
Right.
I don't want to do that. Well, that's just stupid. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
But what's funny, Mitch? My favorite example from that book is actually it's visual for success, right? Because inside the book, they talk about how most people, they look at success and it's just you standing in the middle of a line.
Right.
And then on one side is failure and on the other side is success.
Yeah.
And it's like a choice. You decide you go in one direction. No, but they say, no, but that's not how success is. You actually put yourself at the end of the line.
Right.
And you got to travel through failure, which is in the middle, in order to get to success. That's my favorite. That has been my favorite visual for the longest time, man. And it's a constant reminder. I'm just like, bro, if I'm failing right now, it's only a part of me getting closer to where I really want to be.
Well, that's the thing. People don't want to put themselves out there. Well, I'm going to try this. I might fail. And I say, you will fail. They're like, what?
Right.
if you do what you're going to do and you take your risks and you get out there and you try your ideas, you will fail. I don't know what it'll be at, but you will fail. It's not possible to be correct at everything. So that's the learning experience. That's the growth experience. And if you approach it that way and say, that's okay.
Yep.
I'm not going to beat the heck out of myself and get all depressed and everything. It's just part of the process. Then it's true. You fail your way to success. And sometimes those successes come to an end because something changes, like the world gets sick and they decide that the government says nobody can come to your restaurant anymore. Well, then maybe the online business that you were thinking of doing and selling, and maybe it's time to focus on that stuff. But those are unplanned things, but you still got to learn how to, pivot. The most successful business owners I know accept the fact that there will always be change.
Yes.
Their job is to figure out how to make an opportunity out of that change. It's not that it's going to stay the same. You do something with tax planning. Well, that tax law will go away.
Right.
There's no question about it. It's going to change. And then your business will change. If that's the only thing you're relying on, you got to do something else. And that's okay.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's good advice for people that you said that it's, you got to focus on the failures as being part of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah, part of the story. Definitely. Well, I guess we could go on for hours, but we're going to continue when I come on your podcast. That's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. I love that.
Maybe we could do, I don't know, maybe we can bring on somebody else who's a young kid or something about, motivation, and I can share my stuff on the legal side. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it, but let me stop this.